And he said unto me, Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed.
This prophecy, embracing the longest time period in the Bible, was the rallying cry for the great Millerite movement of the 1840s and became foundational to the establishment of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The three dates of this prophecy are nails in a sure place. It began in the autumn of 457 BC with the command to restore and to build Jerusalem. The first 70 weeks of years reached to the fall of AD 34, when the gospel went to the Gentiles, following the stoning of Stephen. In the midst of the last 7-year week, the Messiah was cut off at his crucifixion. An additional 1810 years stretched to 1844. This is a simple math equation with which most SDAs are well acquainted. 2300 minus 457, you have to minus because it is BC, plus 1 because there was no 0 year, reaches to 1844. This pinpoints AD 31 as the year of the crucifixion. But how did the Millerites arrive at October 22nd as the precise ending date for the prophecy? The Millerites understood that the sanctuary was cleansed each year on the Day of Atonement. Leviticus 23 gives the date for the Day of Atonement as the 10th day of the 7th month. On the Gregorian calendar, the 10th day of the 7th month is July 10, not October 22nd. However, the Millerites knew that in order to find the true Day of Atonement and the precise ending date for the 2300-year prophecy, they needed to use the biblical calendar.
As far back as April, and then in June and December of 1843, and in February of 1844, leading Millerite scholars came to a definite conclusion. This was that the solution of Daniel's prophecy is dependent upon the ancient or original Jewish form of lunisolar time, and not upon the altered modern rabbinical Jewish calendar.
Finding the precise date for Day of Atonement required restoring the biblical calendar. In researching this calendar, the Millerites made an astonishing discovery. The Jews themselves were no longer using the original biblical calendar. This is a very important point because in 1844, the Jews observed Day of Atonement on September 23rd. The Millerites were aware of this, but were unbending in their assertion they were correct and the modern Jews wrong. An article published June 21, 1843, explained their growing understanding.
There is a dispute between the rabbinical and the Caraite Jews as to the correct time of commencing the year. The rabbinical Jews regulate the commencement of the year by astronomical calculations and commence with the first day of the new moon nearest the vernal equinox. The Caraite Jews, on the contrary, still adhere to the letter of the Mosaic law and commence with the new moon nearest the barley harvest in Judea, and which is one moon later than the rabbinical year. There were many in 1844 who made merry over a lunar reckoning that was not based upon the modern Jewish calendar. The answer was returned. Every scholar knows that we are correct as to the Caraite 7th month. The Millerites were well aware of the rabbinical 7th month in September in 1844, and the circumstances was often mentioned in their papers. At the same time, they were emphatic in their challenge that they dissented from the modern Jewish calendar because it did not agree with the laws of Moses.
Heaven used this mighty prophetic movement to restore a knowledge of the original calendar to the world. The accompanying understanding of the cleansing of the sanctuary became the foundational doctrine of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which grew out of the Millerite movement. Unfortunately, less than 100 years later, the Seventh-day Adventist Church had entirely forgotten how the Millerites arrived at October 22nd as the Day of Atonement in 1844 and the ending date of the 2300-day prophecy. In 1938, General Conference President J.L. McElhenney appointed a research committee to study the issue. The committee included Dr. Leroy Froome, Chairman, Dr. Lynn Harper Wood, Secretary, Dr. M.L.Andreasen and Elder F.C. Gilbert, among other well-known leaders in the SDA Church. Their careful study of the Millerite methods and Caraite calendar led them to an entirely unexpected and unwelcome discovery. When the Sabbath is calculated by the biblical calendar, it does not fall on Saturday. Carefully reviewing the prophetic lines of the 2300-day prophecy, they came across another shocking revelation. Although Scripture makes clear that Yahushua was crucified on Passover, the 6th day of the week, the Passover did not fall on Friday in AD 31. The ramifications of this are vast and far-reaching. The beginning date of 457 BC for the commencement of the 2300-day prophecy is unassailable. This leaves 1 year and 1 year only for the Messiah's crucifixion, AD 31. However, when the biblical calendar is applied to the lunar movements in AD 31, it is discovered that the crucifixion took place on the modern equivalent of Wednesday, April 25, not Friday, April 27. The problem was clear. If AD 31 is rejected as the crucifixion year, then the 2300-day prophecy did not begin in 457 BC, and thus did not end on October 22nd, 1844. Furthermore, the weekly cycle of the biblical calendar does not correspond to the weekly cycle of the modern calendar, because there is no way possible for Yahushua to have been crucified on a Friday in AD 31, even though he was crucified on the 6th day of the biblical week. Additional research confirmed the unwelcome discovery. Much of this research has been preserved in the Grace Amadon collection at the Center for Adventist Research at Andrews University. Other documents are housed in the Archives and Statistics Department of the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. The research committee was at a loss to know what to do. They studied the ramifications of presenting the biblical calendar to the church. M.L.Andreasen wrote numerous letters advising against the church adopting the biblical calendar with its weekly cycle and its Sabbaths regulated by the new moon. Most of these letters are not available to the average Adventist. However, the thrust of Andreasen's arguments are well summed up in an undated letter he sent to fellow committee member Grace Amadon.
It would not be easy to explain to the people that the God, Yahuwah, who advocated and instituted such an arrangement, would be very concerned about the exact seventh day. if an explanation were possible, and the people were at last adjusted to the shift in the feast day and the stability of the seventh day, it might be supposed that in time they would get used to the arrangement. But they would no sooner have become accustomed to this till another shift is made. Another shift comes, and another, and another. There is no uniformity, and just as the people get used to a certain arrangement, the day is changed again. Such is more than the common people can understand, and if we go to the people now with such a proposition, we must expect that confusion will result. If in the new calendar scheme we are considering adopting, it should be admitted that local communities have the right of making their own observations of the moon. It would yet remain a question if the proper men competent for such observation would be available. If the people observing the Sabbath also advocate the new scheme of calendation, the resulting confusion will not be of any help to us. The endorsing unreservedly of the plan now before us seems to me, in its implications, so loaded with dynamite, with TNT, that we might well beware. I would most earnestly warn the committee in this matter. I'm afraid of the repercussions.
SDA evangelists point to the doctrine of the cleansing of the sanctuary, which commenced on October 22, 1844, as Adventism's sole unique contribution to Protestant truth. This doctrine is inseparable from the biblical lunisolar calendar, and it does affect when the Sabbath falls. The fact that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has kept the Sabbath on Saturday for many years is not proof that Saturday is the biblical Sabbath.
There is no excuse for anyone in taking the position that there is no more truth to be revealed, and that all our expositions of Scripture are without an error. The fact that certain doctrines have been held as truth for many years by our people is not a proof that our ideas are infallible. Age will not make error into truth, and truth can afford to be fair. No true doctrine will lose anything by close investigation. Those who cling to old customs and hoary errors have lost sight of the fact that light is ever increasing upon the path of all who follow Jesus. Truth is constantly unfolding to the people of God. We must be continually advancing if we are following our leader. It is when we walk in the light that shines upon us, obeying the truth that is open to our understanding, that we receive greater light. We cannot be excusable in accepting only the light which our fathers had 100 years ago. If our God-fearing fathers had seen what we see and heard what we hear, they would have accepted the light and walked in it. If we desire to imitate their faithfulness, we must receive the truths open to us, as they received those presented to them. We must do as they would have done had they lived in our day.
The light is advancing. A decision must be made. Either you will give up Saturday as the seventh-day Sabbath and accept the true biblical Sabbath calculated by the original lunisolar calendar, or you will cling to Saturday and give up the 2300-day prophecy. October 22, 1844, and the sanctuary doctrine. They are mutually exclusive beliefs.
When a man who is honestly mistaken hears the truth, he will either quit being mistaken or cease being honest.
The light is advancing. Will you follow?